A satellite glimpse of a storm spinning in the Gulf, packing wind strong enough to tear homes from foundations and flood towns to their rooftops miles inland from the sea. It was breathtaking and ominous.
Katrina made landfall just after 6 in the morning on August 29, 2005. The Category 3 hurricane packed sustained winds of 120 miles an hour, gusts pushing 150 miles an hour.
But the signature of this storm was its size, stretching almost 400 miles across the Gulf Coast, and its slow churn onshore, a creeping torrent of wind, rain, and destruction, marking one of the largest hurricanes to ever strike the U.S.
And everybody that we know lost their house.
Little kids, 3, 4 years old, sleeping on mats.
In the immediate aftermath of Katrina, WBIR-TV sent crews into the disaster zone to bear witness to the heartache and the need.
The volunteer spirit goes way beyond Tennessee.
Anchor Robin Wilhoit reported from ground zero along the Mississippi coastline.
You know, this kind of tells it all that we don't have a whole lot left.
All but flattened by the eye of the storm.
We're in inner New Orleans now, broken windows like this everywhere. And you can see
Anchor John Becker captured the chaos in New Orleans.
And we're seeing signs about every block saying looters will be shot.
Homeowners armed and fearful of looters.
The whole situation's been frustrating beyond belief.
And a chance encounter that summed up the bizarre scene unfolding in the Crescent City.
This is what's rolling through the streets of New Orleans here. This is one of the most famous intersections in the world. This is Canal and Bourbon Street. You can see who's standing just under that sign there. That's Sean Penn, activist and actor, who's here to help in the search and rescue effort.
We probably got about 45 people out of the water yesterday. On our boat, probably about 15.
So. Your impressions of what you've seen so far?
Well, I'm shocked, as everybody is, at the lack of federal response down here. It's beyond comprehension. There's a lot of civilians doing, an enormously good job.
Families in this neighborhood received some supplies from the 10 days of relief effort.
The response from people in East Tennessee started right after Katrina.
Knoxville became a safe haven for evacuees.
To see everybody welcome us restored my faith in humanity.
5 years after the storm, we checked in on people we first met in 2005.
I want to see the completion of Waveland to better than it was before Katrina hit.
10 years into the recovery, we documented even more progress.
Now, 20 years after Hurricane Katrina, we return to the Gulf Coast. We document the changes. We reflect on the 2 decades of memories. And we learn what's next for our southern neighbors who, all these years later, in many cases, feel more like family.
We join you from Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, marking 20 years since Katrina roared ashore, devastating this community and communities all along the Gulf Coast, taking down homes, businesses, and lives.
We're 600 miles away from Knoxville in East Tennessee, so why Bay St. Louis? Here's why. In the days after Hurricane Katrina, WBIR followed a semi-truck full of supplies headed 600 miles south to help people who lost everything in the historic storm.
For Bill Bass, one of the drivers of the Food City 18-wheelers from Knoxville, this trip was his donation, and he did it in true Tennessee style, as a volunteer.
10 News anchor Russell Biven and behind the camera photographer Jerry Owens worked to fulfill 2 main goals on the trip: follow the aid truck and find a community East Tennessee could adopt.
You're just going down there and wing it.
Looking for somebody to help.
Yeah.
Bay St. Louis, population 11,000, turned out to be the coastal town off the national radar, 60 miles east of New Orleans, where 2 fact finders from Channel 10 decided this town needed help.
And we're just going, and there's a big plywood sign on the road. Somebody had painted relief supplies this way.
If it wasn't people like y'all from Tennessee, Missouri, wherever, we wouldn't have what we have.
Jonathan and Beverly Davis turned their general store into a relief site.
No house, but we have a home. We may not have anything else, but we have each other.
It helped the Mississippi town had a charismatic mayor who became a household name in East Tennessee, Eddie Favre.
You know, this kind of tells it all that we don't have a whole lot left. Basically, it's short of total destruction.
And why Bay St. Louis became What More Can We Do?
But how would you describe that relationship over the years that grew between Bay St. Louis and East Tennessee?
Well, we did several trips and we went down that Thanksgiving.
A Thanksgiving feast sponsored by WBIR along the Gulf Coast played out on televisions all across East Tennessee.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody in Knoxville.
What'd you get?
Turquoise.
Then a toy drive to help hundreds of children, hundreds of miles from Knoxville, enjoy a Christmas after a devastating hurricane.
I don't got that much stuff, but now I do.
The donations, the attention, the friendships would span years, even decades, because people in East Tennessee didn't hesitate to act.
We become part of the community. I don't view myself anymore as an outsider.
Forgive me, but you're tearing up. I mean, this has really got to mean something to you.
Oh, yeah. Means a lot.
Hurricane Katrina, the storm triggers memories of rooftop rescues in New Orleans for much of America. But if you lived in East Tennessee in 2005, Bay St. Louis may be top of mind, a coastal town in Mississippi rebuilt in part by the volunteer spirit, heart, sweat, and soul. And that's why Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. But while we've been here over the years, we have met so many instrumental, life-changing people. One of them, Robin, is the mayor of this town who was mayor during Katrina.
Mayor Eddie Favre. He saw this town through the worst of the worst, wearing shorts the entire time.
None of this was here.
Eddie Favre was the mayor of Bay St. Louis when Katrina stormed the town.
Is Bay St. Louis back?
No. I don't think so. We're well on the road to being back. One of the biggest things we said then is that we owe it to our people to give them every chance in the world to come back.
Pre-Katrina, the population of Bay St. Louis was 11,000. 10 years later, it's closer to 12,000.
And unfortunately, we're still missing quite a few folks. If we take the population, pre-Katrina population for Bay St. Louis, and then factor in the annexed area that came in right after the storm, you know, we should be up somewhere in the neighborhood of 15,000 people.
For sale signs are everywhere. The price for people to return is high.
We've got homes that are required in some parts of Bay St. Louis to elevate to 23 feet because of the flood modeling that came from Katrina.
Insurance is still a bad situation that if you can find it, you can't afford it.
Both mayors, past and present, agree. Some things will never come back, including the lives lost. 12 people in Bay St. Louis died in Katrina.
You know, there's certain things almost daily that you see that brings back some kind of memory.
But they know it's the reality of calling this coastal community home.
We know it'll happen. You know, it's going to happen. But whatever happens, we'll come out of it together again.
One of the signatures for Mayor Favre was wearing those shorts. He promised to wear them until this town was back. He even wore them to a White House reception in a tuxedo and shorts. He was true to his word. We miss him dearly. And Robin, he is just one of many people who shaped this town.
Absolutely. Coming up, we will hear from a woman born and raised in the Gulf Coast. But when Katrina hit, she and her son fled 600 miles to East Tennessee. Welcome back to Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, as we mark 20 years after Hurricane Katrina.
Again, we're only about an hour or so outside of the city of New Orleans, and one of the people who knows the struggles of that city during Hurricane Katrina is the current chief of police in Knoxville. Chief Paul Noel.
You know, it was certainly wasn't overblown. It felt to me like the world had ended. And there was just no other way that I could describe it. It really, truly felt like the world had ended. You gotta remember there was no electricity. The heat, I can't describe the heat. You know, New Orleans in August is brutally hot with 100% humidity with the sun baking on you. So it truly did feel like the world ended. There was no water, no running water. The fire department only had water to use to fight fires that was in the trucks. There was no water pressure. That was a big concern in the French Quarter. You know, if you know your history, the French Quarter is Spanish architecture because when the French controlled it, it burned to the ground. And you know, a lot of old wooden buildings that are very, very close together. So it truly felt like the world had ended.
One of the things that the chief said that stands out, Robin, is every time he goes and gets a soda, he fills it to the brim with ice. That was such a luxury during Hurricane Katrina.
You know, there is another law enforcement officer from East Tennessee who played a huge part in the hours after Katrina hit the Gulf Coast. Former Knox County Sheriff Tim Hutchison got a call in the early morning hours of August 29th to come with his helicopters to rescue thousands of people.
It's extremely hot. The sun's out, and there are no accommodations there. And the other thing is, for any of these people here,
as a longtime sheriff, Tim Hutchison was always at the ready for any emergency in Knox County. But on August 29th, 2005, he remembers answering a desperate call for help from 600 miles away in New Orleans.
I got to the office that morning and I got a phone call from Sheriff Harry Lee of Jefferson Parish. Harry goes, Tim, I need helicopters. He said, we're underwater. I said, what is it? Did it come in? Did it do much damage? He said, well, I don't know about the damage, but he said everything's flooded down here.
Within hours, 3 of Knox County's 6 helicopters with pilots and crews were airborne, headed south into the disaster zone. Hurricane Katrina had overwhelmed New Orleans. 80% of the Crescent City was underwater after the storm's sheer force collapsed the levees that protected the historic city that sits below sea level.
We were going across Lake Pontchartrain and we could see the glitter off of the water, the sun hitting it, and it was, you could see tall buildings, but you couldn't see any houses. It was just all water. And so once we crossed over, a lot of the houses were completely submerged. Some of them had 3 and 4 feet of a roof above the water, and there sat people. My first thought was, how in the world are we going to get all these people off?
Thousands had escaped the fast-rising floodwater by climbing onto their rooftops. There, they endured unrelenting 100-degree-plus temperatures and other dangers as they waited for help. Hutchison and his team were among a fleet of helicopter crews who launched into a weeks-long mission, rescuing them one by one. Of the hundreds he pulled to safety, one woman and her story stands out.
When we got there and I shut everything down, got out, I asked her, I said, you mind if I ask you a question? She said, no. And so I said, why didn't you evacuate? She said, my great-grandmother lived here, my grandmother lived here, my mother lived here, I've lived here. She said, this has never really happened. I said, you gonna evacuate next time? She said, I'm moving. And a lot of people did.
In the immediate aftermath of Katrina, it was up to local officials and volunteer rescuers like Hutchison and his team to take charge. Federal help didn't arrive for days. High water kept FEMA trucks filled with supplies at a standstill. Fueled only by crackers and drinks they loaded up from home, Hutchison says every day was a blur, but he clearly remembers flying the New Orleans police chief over the city for the first time.
I picked him up and he had a headset on and you have to key to talk, but I could hear him. He wasn't keying to talk. He was just commenting out loud, and all I heard 3 or 4 times was, oh my God, oh my God.
Get us out of here, we want to get out of here!
Nothing is open here, so if you can imagine living in a town in Knoxville and nothing being open and not knowing if it will even open the next 2 to 3 months. That's what they're faced with.
Over a lifetime in emergency response, Hutchison says Katrina stands apart in scale, in devastation, and in the lasting lessons learned. In every crisis, he says, training takes over, but it's not always enough to keep disasters from upending lives.
Just like Katrina, just like what happened in North Carolina and East Tennessee last year, just like what happened in Texas. You never know what's coming. You have to be prepared to go for whatever does show up.
Sheriff Hutchison has in his office a poster, if you will. Part of it shows New Orleans before Katrina, the other after Katrina, just serves as a reminder of the ferocity of this storm.
There are so many ties between the Gulf Coast here and East Tennessee. Among them is the former mayor of the city of Knoxville. Mayor Haslam was critical to welcoming evacuees who sought refuge in our community, all from up and down the Gulf Coast. Here's our interview with the former mayor.
But FEMA just really couldn't give us a schedule and say, here's who's coming and when, et cetera. So they kind of came in bursts and trickles, and they would typically fly into the airport, and then we would set them, usually I would go on the airplane, the commander of the air base would go in, I'd say, hey, welcome to Knoxville. The commander would explain how the process is going. We had buses set up to bring folks here, or to some different churches that were around town as well. We were trying to not, flood the zone, if you want a bad analogy in this case, but not overwhelm anyone. Everything they had was in a garbage bag. And they're holding kids and some cases pets, but everything they had was with them, and they had no idea what was going to happen to what they left behind. The worst events bring out both sometimes, in this case, the worst in Mother Nature, but also sometimes the worst in human nature as well. But more often than not, and it's one of the rewards of being in office, you see how many great people raise their hand and say, I want to help. And that'll actually, if you ask me about Knoxville and Katrina, that will be my lasting memory.
Robin, as you know, Mayor Haslam went on to be governor of the state of Tennessee and handled a lot of emergencies as a leader. But he says Katrina really stands out, the devastation of the storm, but also the response from people here and in our community.
Yes, let's talk about our community. A woman, though, who was born and raised here on the Gulf Coast, decided when Katrina hit, she was going to move and start her new life 600 miles away in East Tennessee.
Walk us through this. Framed pictures are Sean Folco's prized possessions. You'll find them scattered about.
So this is Jacob and I standing on this lot when we decided this was it, and the house plans are in my hands.
That was December 2005. Mom and son on a plot of land in Sevier County, ready to rebuild their lives.
So the upper left, where it says Deputy Sheriff St. Bernard Parish, my mother happened to be the first female officer in St. Bernard Parish.
4 months earlier, the two called St. Bernard Parish near New Orleans home. The pictures stir memories of a monster storm barreling toward the Gulf Coast.
So I'd get to my office and I open my laptop and I see this monster storm in the Gulf. And I thought, holy goodness, we really do have to go.
With only overnight bags and 2 dogs, they headed to Georgia to wait out Hurricane Katrina. On August 29, 2005, that small family realized they would not be returning home anytime soon.
And I remember waking up and seeing on the television, and I'm like rubbing my eyes, looking for my glasses, and it said 80% of New Orleans underwater.
The force of the water and wind wiped out the levees that protected the city. A chance phone call to a friend was a reality check.
He said, it's the entire parish is underwater. He said, there's nothing, you can't come back here.
Where's the light, mate? Sean, in case there's a snake.
In early October 2005, Sean finally got the all clear to return home and captured the ruins on video.
There you go, snake living on Mike's tire.
She also found treasures.
How about this vase?
Oh my God, that's my mama's. It was like an old ghost town. Like, you'd hear the signs just going boom, boom, hitting, like business signs swinging, and no power anywhere. And it just looked like a nuclear bomb went off.
Oh, Lord.
And there was a big wooden sign that said, and they painted on it, "We will rebuild." And there was a cross. You're choked up, sorry.
The Louisiana native faced a hard decision.
You had to choose your hard. going back and rebuilding, you know, and being committed to the community, kudos to them. But for me, I chose, my heart was to start over in, you know, East Tennessee and just make a new life because I feared it would happen again.
With family in Sevier County, it was the natural place for them to land. They built a home on that plot of land and filled it, including a few pieces of their past that Katrina spared.
And I lost my mother 9 months before Hurricane Katrina, so this was a big, for me, it was huge to save this, and it stays on my fireplace mantle now in my bedroom.
20 years later, Jacob is grown with a family of his own. Sean is remarried. She works at a nonprofit that provides health care to people who can't afford it. This after wrapping up a long, successful career at a Knoxville public relations firm.
And I owe them a debt of gratitude for the life-changing experience that they afforded for myself and my son. I will forever hold them in my heart.
There's the car and the swimming pool.
Along with the lesson she learned the hard way from Katrina.
The material things can be replaced, but your life cannot be replaced. And the fact that God woke us up today, whether we be in a campsite or in a hotel or motel, in our car, wherever we are, means we have purpose and we have a meaning.
Sean says while she loves East Tennessee, her heart is still here in the Gulf Coast. The one thing she misses the most, the food from the Gulf, of course, no doubt.
Who wouldn't? One of the things that people from our neck of the woods miss as well is just the community and the camaraderie that they built in the midst of the disaster. And we connected with a church in Kingston and their members who came down a couple of times to help people here in the Gulf Coast.
20 years after Katrina, and this community has been rebuilt from ground up. Behind us, a marina. It was not there pre-Katrina. And behind me right here, the Bay Bridge. It's back up and running.
Some of the people who helped this city on the comeback were from East Tennessee, and we connected with a church from Kingston who did that several times. Our first meeting inside this house of worship was almost 2 decades ago. Does it feel like 20 years?
In some ways, it feels like a lifetime ago. In other ways, no, it doesn't seem like it.
Inside a Kingston church, 2 missionary builders walk us through their memories of walking into the aftermath of a hurricane disaster.
I really did want to go down there. I have a heart, Don has a heart, the people here have a heart for going to help, and so we were ready to go.
We're the volunteer state, so as a Tennessean, that's what we do. We go down to try to help. We volunteer to help. But as a follower of Christ, we have even more reason to go and to help. As Christ said, that's how they'll know we're Christians, if we love one another. And so that's our motivation.
The work crew from Kingston found homeowners suffering in Bay St. Louis after Hurricane Katrina, broke out their tools, and set to work.
Despite all their needs, they still had a great spirit.
If I put myself in their shoes and had lost everything and been through everything they had been through, I would hope, but I won't guarantee that I would have the same attitude.
The missionary construction work for First Baptist Church here in Kingston started way back in 1986, but their focus for years was on communities up north. This is the list. But Hurricane Katrina changed all that. You can see in 2006, they turned their attention to Bay St. Louis, Mississippi.
And I remember turning onto the street where the Morandi family lived, where our project would be for the week. And the thing that struck me big time was down this narrow street, it was a long street, on each side were piles and piles and piles of old appliances, about 8 feet tall on both sides, lining the street. And I thought, I've never seen anything, I don't even know what happened here.
The Morandi family was dumbfounded by the outpouring of help from the army of volunteers who just showed up from the volunteer state.
Yes, they were living in a very small camping trailer with 3 children.
We really, from heartfelt, thank you very much for giving us so much love.
he was grateful, he was encouraged, he had hope to continue.
They're our family now.
We returned a year later to see the progress.
This is our great room where, of course, the kids practice basketball in here right now.
This is a picture of the Morandi family, but the connection that we made with that family was tremendous.
The Morandi family benefited from the unsolicited support, and so did their neighbors.
Because we would take a group of 25 or 30 people, and in a week's time, we would have a building under roof.
The volunteer angels from East Tennessee prompted one homeowner in Bay St. Louis to write a letter to God.
I'd like to read a letter to God dedicated to all of the wonderful people who have come from Kingston, Tennessee to help me. I love each of you so very much.
Miss Ganby is gone, and so are members of the original Kingston work crew.
This group picture reminds me of all the people that went, the people that we've lost that have gone, those of us that have aged a bit.
2005 brought out the worst in Mother Nature and the best in humanity, showcased by the generosity of a group of dedicated volunteers from Kingston, Tennessee.
I'm sure the people there had this same feeling of just being helpless, and I experienced some of that feeling as well, meaning that I couldn't help as many people as I wanted to help. But I came to peace with it by saying, I will help you. I will help the ones I know about.
And the thing that I think is most important about these trips is the hope, the encouragement, even more than the work we did, the hope and encouragement you take to those people in their lowest times.
Hope and faith. Talk to people here. They will tell you that's what got them through the storm.
And people in East Tennessee knew they needed to offer that hope, and they did so in part through faith. Here is one of our favorite stories from the recovery of Hurricane Katrina, the Bible story.
I was so excited when I found it.
This well-worn giant print Bible from a Sherry in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Words cannot describe when you're going through something.
Saved this Sherry in Biloxi, Mississippi.
It just lifted me up. It ministered to me.
Hurricane Katrina stole everything Sherry Helveston owned.
But that's where it was, and it just went over that fence, and it landed almost to that other street.
A wall of water, 27 feet high, washed away her home of 30 years, drowning everything in bayou mud, including her family Bible.
This was home to me. This was my home. And I don't cry just for me. It's for all the people around here. You miss your neighbors, your friends, and that's what I cry. Plenty of times when the depression gets so bad, I get in my car and I ride around the neighborhood because I've watched every one of their homes, each and every one of them, be picked up in dump trucks. I saw that because I was the only one left here.
Sherry had her doubts about rebuilding.
I had some rough days here, yes. That I wondered if I had did the right thing.
But those doubts faded when she found this decades-old Bible. It was buried at the bottom of a box of donated clothes from a church in East Tennessee.
When I opened it up, I said, oh, Lord, a giant print Bible, just what I always wanted. And when
Few words inside offered more comfort than a handwritten note from a woman by her same name in Knoxville.
When you're going through something so devastating as Katrina, the words that she wrote were so powerful. To whomever finds this Bible, I feel so helpless to help you. You are so very far away. Please accept our meager offerings, and please accept this Bible. It was my grandmother's. She is 101, suffering from Alzheimer's, and probably would have been one of the first to die if East Tennessee had suffered this disaster. Feel the power of our prayers and have faith. Godspeed, Sherry. When you're going through something like Katrina, it was exactly what me and the world needed to hear.
Overwhelmed by her gift, Sherry shared the discovery with anyone who would listen, including Knoxville author Brenda Walsh.
She said, Brenda, I got to tell you, she said, my biggest dream is to someday meet the other Sherry. I want to meet the woman that was unselfish enough, that was kind enough, and she said that loved God enough to part with her own grandmother's Bible.
In her book about small miracles during and after Katrina, Walsh devoted a chapter to the Biloxi Bible story.
To know that another person parted with something so precious as her own grandmother's Bible, I mean, that speaks volumes.
But finding the author of the note, the mysterious Sherry from Knoxville, turned into a discouraging hunt.
We both searched for hours and hours.
Did you ever think you would find her?
At that time, no.
I wanted to send boots so someone wouldn't.
Meet the Sherry from Knoxville.
I so sincerely wanted to help somebody.
More than a year after she sent that Bible to Biloxi.
What needed to be done was that Bible needed to go, even if I didn't want to.
Volunteers who helped Sherry and her husband transform a Home Depot garden shed into their new home also helped us find Sherry Childress in Knoxville.
But it was the big print. It was Mama Lehman's Bible.
We also met now 102-year-old Mama Lehman and learned it wasn't easy for her granddaughter to give away that family Bible.
I didn't have some peace that I had done the right thing. No, I just, so I thought that it probably had rotted in a parking lot.
But one day, more than 12 months after the donation drive, leaders in her Knoxville church told Sherry Mama Lehman's Bible made it to Biloxi. It wasn't long before the two Sherrys connected by phone.
I feel a really close connection to her, even though I've never met her.
But we clicked instantly. There was a bond there through this letter that she knew and I knew that there was something to this.
Biloxi sits about 570 miles south of Knoxville, and both Sherrys talked about meeting face-to-face sometime. But since this story is about small gifts, we thought a surprise plane ticket would speed up that long overdue meeting.
And here is this lady that I am supposed to meet.
Fresh off her flight south, anticipation builds during the car ride, and Sherry admits she's already cried this morning.
I feel like it's Christmas. It doesn't feel real.
15 minutes later, outside the home of the Sherry from Biloxi, the surprise is set, and then, out from behind an old FEMA trailer, the two Sherrys meet for the first time.
No! No! I haven't called you because I knew I could not tell you. Oh my God! No! Oh my! No! I can't believe that. I am so shocked. Are you okay? Oh my God. It's okay. It's okay.
That is a blessing, I tell you.
Oh.
She's so happy you just don't know.
I would
Yes.
love.
Oh,
I would
you got
love.
to see it. You got to see it. You got to see my house.
The moment begs for one more reunion. Hand in hand, the two Sherrys walk indoors, and for the first time since she gave it away,
Oh, okay, there it is. See, it just gives me chills.
tucked it in a donation box, hoping to bring comfort to hurricane survivors, Sherry Childress once again holds her gift, Mama Lehman's Bible.
I feel kind of so small. I mean, it's just incredible.
The sun is setting on another day here in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, but a lot of the people who live in this community are looking at better days ahead.
If you would like to see our 20 years of Hurricane Katrina coverage, go to WBIR.com or our streaming app, WBIR Plus. Good night from Bay St. Louis.